So, you know how in Israel there's a law that bans Israeli Jews from marrying Arabs, Palestinians, Muslims? And they say that this is based on the morale of their holy book, right? But I'm about to show you how this just goes to show that these people don't know the book. And really, this law, like about everything else in their regime, is based in white supremacy, racism, and ultimately mid-20th century eugenics. Because the thing is that the most famous and beloved of the Israelites and the Israelite kings, they weren't purebloods. Solomon's mother was a Canaanite. David's grandmother was also a Canaanite, a Moabite to be specific. And a Moabite so famous, she got a whole book in the Bible named after her, the Book of Ruth. What's more is that Ruth and Bathsheba, the mother of Solomon, both of these women were widows. And the widow is the carrier of the greatest secret in alchemy. The Freemasons are going to be pretty pissed about me revealing this. But what we call the Philosopher's Stone is actually the widow's elixir. And the sons of the widow were the real heroes of humanity, which is why a Freemason is otherwise called the son of the widow. Also, hi, I'm Eliane, and I wrote a PhD on political identity in Palestine and Israel. Oh, you thought I was just a little twitchy witch? No, that's Dr. Twitchy Witch to you. I also wrote a master's on alchemy and Jungian dream analysis. I know everything. And I've read all of Abraham's books, cover to cover, and some of them in their original language. I'm not from Israel or Palestine or anywhere else but the earth. I have no ethnicity, believe in no nation, and identify with nothing but humanity. And if you're watching this, then you're probably someone who wants to see a world without borders, just like me. And you're also probably someone who understands that identity politics benefits no one but the capitalists. Because the more identified you are with an age, a gender, a sexuality, a nation, a religion, the easier you are to market to. But the less you identify with, the more you understand that identity is fluid and that you change every single day. That as you watch this video, you're not the same person who watched the last video. Then you're really hard to pin down and categorize. It's really hard to put you in a demographic when you're a shapeshifter. But anyway, back to Ruth, whose book I encourage you to read because it's really short. But basically, Ruth lived with an Israelite woman named Naomi. She got married, her husband died, and eventually when Naomi was sending her and her sister back to her tribe, she decided to stay with Naomi because she loved her so much. She was like, please, Naomi, let me go with you and worship your God. Naomi approves, takes her back with her to Israel. She marries an Israelite and eventually becomes the grandmother of King David, a man after God's own heart. And then David, who's basically God's favorite ever, he has a whole harem of Israelite wives that he wins in battle and whatnot. But he eventually falls in love with a Canaanite woman named Bathsheba. He sees Bathsheba and she is so beautiful, like man's cannot contain himself. So he sleeps with her even though she's married, and he has such a good time, like he cannot forget that. He wants some more, so he basically sends her husband out to battle and conspires to have him killed so that, he can marry her in peace and have her have his babies. But this makes God angry, and he sends one of his prophets to tell David a whole fable with a moral lesson, which I can get into in another video because it's a super cute story. But basically the lesson is that, David, you literally have everything. You have a whole harem of wives, and this poor man, Uriah, had the one wife, and you took her away from him. That's so greedy, bro. And for that, I'ma punish you and unalive your first child with Bathsheba, because I know she's pregnant. But David repents, and God forgives him, and he keeps going. Bathsheba has another son, and his name is Solomon. And we all know that Solomon goes on to be like the king of kings. Solomon is bestowed the honor of building a temple for God, an honor that God did not give to David or anyone before Solomon, and hence the importance of Solomon's temple. The temple built by Hiram Abif, the king of Tyre, who was also a widow's son, who's really the main character in Freemasonry and the Bible's most famous alchemist, and who it is speculated was Solomon's relative. And if the genealogies are correct, and Jesus Christ is really the descendant of Solomon and David, then Yeshua was also a Canaanite. See, because Yahweh says a lot of things throughout the Old Testament that you might think are just absolutely horrid. But even though he has a rep for doing what he says, he doesn't actually follow through on most of the stuff he says he's going to do. Like he repeatedly says throughout the Old Testament that no one is ever going to remember the Canaanites, that the Israelites, they're going to erase them, they're going to eradicate them from the face of the earth, and no one is ever going to hear about them again. And yet here we are, you and I, talking about them. And there goes Yahweh, one book later, picking a Canaanite's descendant to be his favorite king. Bro is a talker, okay? Half the stuff he says, if not more than half, doesn't come to pass. And the modern state of Israel, as we should all know by now, has modeled itself on European colonies, and specifically the French colony, and German tactics for apartheid. Specifically here, that in order for one to maintain a purity of race, which I also don't believe in because it's not scientific, laws need to be implemented to ban intermarriage. But a little bit of critical thinking will show you that if anybody can convert to a religion and then get married, is there any purity of blood being maintained here? Anyway, I think I've rambled enough for now, so come to my live in a few hours. Love you, be free, decategorize yourself.